Pled out to 2 minor slaps on the wrist misdemeanors for not paying his taxes for a couple of years back in 2018, 2019. Here's Kevin McCarthy's reaction.
To show the two-tier system in America. If you are the president's leading political opponent, the DOJ tries to literally put you in jail and give you prison time. If you are the president's son, you get a sweetheart deal. Now, this does nothing to our investigation. It actually should enhance our investigations because the DOJ should not be able to withhold any information now, saying that because of pending investigation, they should be able to provide Chairman Comer with any information that he requires.
There's a key point. Now, what we're looking at is the House is no longer encumbered by a DOJ investigation. The slap on the wrist for Hunter Biden opens the door for the House to be able to get information they want related to their information. But let's just look at the Hunter Biden charging document that he pled guilty to real quick, just to get a sense of what this is. I'm just going to read count 1 because count 1 is actually far more instructive. Count 2 is exactly the same. So no reason to get into read the same thing with a different year. During the calendar year 2017, the defendant, Robert Hunter Biden, who was a resident of the District of Columbia, had and received taxable income in excess of $1.5 million. Now, recognize this. If you and I were dealing with an IRS tax problem, they're very, very, very precise on how much money we made. Well, but in terms of this charging document, somewhere in excess of 1.5 million. Could be 10 million, could be 20 million, could be 500 billion. Somewhere in excess of 1.5 million, on which taxable income there was only the United States an income tax in excess of 100,000. In excess of 100,000, could be a million, could be 10 million. We don't know. It's just some amorphous term thrown out because the fact of the matter is, Hunter Biden got a whole lot more money funneled through him than the 1.5 million that they're talking about here. He was required by law to pay on or before, so he was required to pay the tax in excess of 100,000. You'd think they'd be precise, but no, they're directly imprecise for a purpose. He was required by law to pay on or before April 17, 2018. That income tax, the Internal Revenue Service Center at Hartford, Connecticut, or to another Internal Revenue Service office permitted by the Commissioner of Revenue. Very precise where he's supposed to pay it, not so precise how much he should have paid. While knowing and believing all the foregoing, Robert Hunter Biden did willfully fail on or about April 17, 2018, in the District of Columbia and elsewhere to pay the income tax due. So that's the charge. Oh, he didn't pay his tax. He didn't pay his tax. There's no, you and I dodge $100,000 tax bill, we're going to jail. Hunter Biden, nope. Slap on the wrist. He's not going to jail. Pay a fine. Go. Nothing to see here. And an inexact fine because guess what? They don't even name how much money he owed. That's the incredible part. Well, why wouldn't they have named how much money they owed? Well, let's take a look at Chuck Grassley from a couple of weeks ago talking about what they know, what the Congress knows about potential charging documents that the FBI has had since the Hunter Biden investigation has been undertaken. Charging documents that the U.S. attorney out of Delaware had in his possession, knew about, and chose to ignore.
3 produced to the House committees redacted reference that the foreign national who allegedly bribed Joe and Hunter Biden allegedly has audio recordings of his conversation with them. 17 such recordings. According to the 1023, the foreign national possesses 15 audio recordings of phone calls between him and Hunter Biden. According to the 1023, the foreign national possesses 2 audio recordings of phone calls between him and then Vice President Joe Biden. These recordings were allegedly kept as a sort of insurance policy for the foreign national in case that he got into a tight spot. The 1023 also indicates that then Vice President Joe Biden may have been involved in bereavement employing Hunter Biden. Based on the facts known to the Congress and the public, it's clear that the Justice Department, the FBI, haven't nearly had the same laser focus on the Biden family. Special Counsel Jack Smith has used a recording against former President Trump. Well, what is U.S. Attorney Weiss doing with respect to these alleged Joe and Hunter Biden recordings that are apparently relevant to the high-stakes bribery scheme?
Okay, right there. Weiss ignored and wiped away the high-stakes bribery scheme. Weiss decided, no, there was no such thing. I'm not going to prosecute it. But I want to be clear. Let's just lay out what the high-stakes bribery scheme is again. And then I'm going to show you in a few seconds how the Justice Department handled it when they were dealing with Paul Manafort, the chairman of the Trump campaign in 2016. How did the Mueller special counsel go after Manafort on virtually the same charge? But first, let's look at the Biden, do a little refresher. Okay, this is from the House Committee on Oversight Committee. Let's just look at a couple of these Twitter feeds. First one, bank records we've obtained reveal Rob Walker, Biden family associate, uses company to transfer money from a Chinese energy company to Hunter Biden, James Biden, Hallie Biden, unknown Biden. Okay, so there's a whole thread on that. I have James Comer. I have Biden family financial records. There is a money trail. Let's just look at what Comer had.
Representative James Comer is the Oversight Committee chairman. So, Congressman, you're going to get your hands on these suspicious wire transfers from Yellen, but you're also making progress where else?
Well, we have bank records. We have bank records from one of the 13 banks in hand that were used by the Biden family members in these business schemes. So these bank records prove that the Bidens did receive money through a shell company from the Chinese Communist Party. So this is the first link. Hopefully within the next 48 hours, we'll have more bank records from another bank, and we're just going to keep following the money. We know from our sources that have come in, the whistleblowers, where the money trails are. And of course, the Democrats have denied it. The White House has denied it. There's no denying it now with the bank records. And now Treasury's forced to have to give us the suspicious activity reports because they acted all along like there was nothing there. Well, I can assure you there's something there, and everyone knows it now.
From the bank records that you've seen so far, what can you tell us? What was the money for exactly?
That's a great question. And that would be a great question for the media to ask the Bidens. They got money from people directly linked with the Chinese Communist Party for what? You know, for years we've heard, well, it was because of a business deal. It was an energy deal. I don't see any energy deal here. All I see are transactions from China to an LLC, which was essentially a pass-through, and then deposits into the Biden account.
Okay, so listen, they used pass-throughs. They used 20 pass-throughs, 13 banks, in a scheme to try to launder money. Imagine that. What is, it's a not hardly something that you'd sit there and say normal activity. But once again, let's just go and see how they handled. How did the Department of Justice, how did the Mueller special counsel team handle Paul Manafort and a guy named Rick Gates, who was his partner, in an indictment on the same type of charge? Remember, Manafort was not, he was Trump's campaign manager. The reason they were going after Manafort was because they were trying to get him to say that Donald Trump had something to do and there was some Russia collusion in the campaign. And Manafort had run a campaign along with a guy named John Podesta, who's a big Democrat donor. And so he had run a campaign for a candidate for president in Ukraine, as is the norm. The candidate for president won, and it's actually the campaign. Truthfully, the guy was more lean towards Russia rather than towards the West. Podesta and Manafort ran the campaign jointly. Manafort gets indicted. Here's what the indictment actually says. Okay, I'm just gave you the Ukraine work stuff from 2006 through at least 2016. That's the indictment. By the way, it must be reported and known that there was never any tie in terms of what Manafort ends up getting convicted of to the Trump campaign. In fact, they never were able to draw the correlation. So they went back in time and they dredged up stuff and said, oh, Manafort, you did this stuff in the past. We're going to get you. The only reason we really care is because you were the Trump chairman. Turnovers, give us something on Trump and we'll go easy on you. If you don't, you're going to prison. And Paul Manafort went to prison. But here's what just listen to this charging document. In furtherance of the scheme, that's a money laundering scheme that Manafort engaged to generate tens of millions of dollars in income as a result of the Ukraine war. In order to hide Ukraine payments from U.S. authorities from approximately 2006 through at least 2016, Manafort engaged to launder the money through scores of U.S. and foreign corporations, partnerships, and bank accounts. Sound familiar? The Biden family had 20 different corporations, 13 different banks. So guess what? Department of Justice is able to follow these money trails when they want to. In furtherance of the scheme, Manafort engaged funneled millions of dollars in payments into foreign nominee companies and bank accounts opened by them and in their accomplices in nominee names and in various foreign countries, including Cyprus, St. Vincent, and the Grenadines, and the Seychelles. Manafort engaged hid the existence of foreign companies and bank accounts, falsely and repeatedly reporting to their tax preparers in the United States that they had no foreign bank accounts. Well, guess what? Hunter Biden didn't report his foreign bank accounts. In furtherance of the scheme, Manafort engaged concealed from the United States to work as agents of and millions of dollars in payments from Ukraine's political parties and leaders. Because Manafort engaged, among others, directed a campaign to lobby U.S. officials on behalf of the government of Ukraine. Now, recognize Hunter Biden had the head of Burisma in visiting with Joe Biden in the White House when a week after he signed a deal with the Burisma people. Okay, a week later, he had the head of Burisma in the White House meeting with Joe Biden at a Christmas party, by the way. So, you know what? Seems like there might have been some lobbying going on, but no, that's lost on Weiss, on the special counsel, or on the U.S. attorney investigating this out of Delaware. Wink, wink. So you have in the Manafort case, the charges, when you read the Manafort document, show that the FBI can be very specific and can be very in-depth, and they can actually look at how whole schemes of moving money through various banks and around offshore accounts and the like to hide its existence and hide where it came from. They were able to do it, Paul Manafort. They were able to do it very rapidly, unwound this in a few months. They were motivated with Paul Manafort because they wanted Paul Manafort to have his life flash before his eyes and say, hey, I'm going to spend 10 years in jail, or I'm going to go and I'm going to give him something on Trump. Because their objective was to shake down Manafort. Their objective wasn't to convict Manafort. They were going to convict, the fact that he didn't give them anything on Trump because there was nothing to give is why he ended up going to prison. So this is the typical charging document. This is what you would have expected in an investigation that should have been able to, if you're sitting there saying that Hunter Biden once again had all this money, back to the charging document from Biden, had income in excess of 1.5 million. Well, where'd it come from? Well, what we know is it came from foreign entities, according to the House, because the House investigation. They came from a lot of foreign entities. Chinese energy firms are tied to the Communist Party, came from the Burisma, the Ukraine natural gas firm, came from Romanian oligarchs. It came from all sorts of different foreign sources. And the only commodity that Hunter Biden had to sell was access to dad, the big guy. But the Justice Department said, through their slap in the wrist, their misdemeanor charges against Hunter Biden, said, nope, nothing to see here. We wipe our hands of this. This is the Bidens, doesn't count. We're not, there's rules for Trump and there's rules for Biden. And that's the lesson to take away from the Hunter Biden investigation, or this Hunter Biden plea. Yeah, he pled guilty to 2 counts in 2017 and 2018. He took in a whole lot more money than he reported, and may not have paid any taxes or tried to even report anything. He took in a whole bunch of money, more than 1.5 million. We don't know how much more. He didn't pay taxes, which amounted for more than 100,000, but we don't know how much more. And he got a misdemeanor, and gee whiz, don't do it again. But apparently, the incurious Weiss, who had this investigation for 4 years, did not bother to look into anything, because the objective of the Weiss investigation was to actually bury the facts on the what Biden family's been up to. Well, fortunately, we do have the House Oversight Committee, which is not going to let these facts be buried. Fortunately, that is the way things are going. We're now going to see them unleashed, because Merrick Garland no longer has any excuses. As Kevin McCarthy said, there are no excuses. Remember, Kevin McCarthy has to approve every single subpoena. He has to approve every single subpoena. And now the House Oversight Committee should be unleashed in its entirety. And there are no excuses for Merrick Garland, for FBI Director Wray, for anyone to continue hiding documents that will prove out the entirety of the Biden family scheme, and maybe exculpatory for the Biden family. People are innocent until proven guilty. But when you continually try to hide documents, and you have people fronting for you hiding documents, when people lie about the laptop and say, oh, well, it's fake information, when they know, as the FBI did, when they know it was true. They knew at the time it was accurate, it was valid. They had it for a year. They just didn't do anything with it. It was inconvenient, so they buried it. So with that, folks, that's the story on the Hunter Biden wrist slap today. It's one more step in the cover-up of the Biden crime family and the international syndicate that they created to run money and hide money that flowed into the pockets of the children and indeed the big guy himself. It's Rick Manning, Americans for Limited Government. I'm going to take some questions now, and we'll just go from there. Okay, that's how we got Al Capone at the start. She didn't claim his $1 million worth of art. How about Chinese money? Yeah, Jim, he didn't claim any of that. This was from 2017, 2018. But it's designed to basically say, we've investigated it, enough done, we're through with that. And instead, what it does is just shows exactly how far they will go to try to hide the facts. See, watching from Australia, I have to tell you that we are all worried with your dementia patient running the White House. I don't want my kids to go to war against Russia or China thanks to Joe Sniff your child back and impeach him already for all our children's sakes. Bernadette, I first of all, I appreciate you tuning in from Australia. Yeah, we've called for impeachment, and I think there's a process that needs to go through. Impeachment's a serious thing, and it got trivialized when the Democrats, Pelosi, kept going after Trump. But it's a very serious thing. I'm not going to deny that that Joe Biden's seeming lack of competence is concerning. It's concerning to all of us. And I can see, but what's really concerning, the outgrowth of that is really terrible decisions are being made that put the world at risk. And it puts the world at risk, not just in an overt way, but Chinese encroachment around the world is growing, and the soft power of China is growing in a way that was unimaginable. And it's because nobody can trust what Biden says. Nobody believes Biden's in control. And power of war is a vacuum. And right now there's a vacuum of power in the world because Joe Biden is viewed by the world as being less than able to live up to the job. I'll put it that way. Typical charge document. Yeah, it is. It's a, except for I just gave you the charging document for Manafort, and it's very specific. And it was and this, by the way, this was a charging document on Biden. This was actually what the agreed plea agreement was. That we never got the charging document. It was the plea agreement document that we got for Hunter Biden. And so that was laying out the charges. The Manafort document was an indictment document, which was typical. And that's why I presented it to you, so you could see the difference between what was done with Hunter Biden and the specificity with Manafort Gates, and how it is normal to dig in and to go and find the money trails and do all that. Weiss, the U.S. Attorney of Delaware, may have found those money trails. He just buried them under a plea agreement and a slap on the wrist. So now it's up to the House to do their job. Another Biden family scumbags will not see prison time in his future, a slap on the wrist. Yeah, Larry, you're right. It's exactly correct. Jerry Wyatt, Hunter Biden is going to get a slap on the wrist. These charges aren't just a ploy to say, hey, we went after him, locked the whole. Well, you know what? That is exactly right. In fact, what they're going to say is, oh, well, we went after Hunter Biden, so it justifies going after Donald Trump. They say, see, we charged and we convicted Hunter Biden of misdemeanors, and so what we're doing isn't partisan in terms of going after Trump. This is a cover-up, nothing more, nothing less. Let's see, they just need to get jail done. Yeah, they do need to get jail time, Dolores. But it is, the fact of the matter is, Hunter Biden isn't getting jail time on this. Oh, by the way, the gun charge that they also included in, they gave him essentially gave him an out on buying a gun illegally when he was on drugs. And once again, if your son had done the same thing, and if your son had been on drugs and bought a gun and was running around cheating the government out of taxes, trust me, your son wouldn't have gotten the Hunter treatment. Guilty of what? Get out of jail. Yeah, Jeff, sorry, but our objective here, I'm going to just make this real quick. Our objective here, we do have a two-tier system of justice. It is a dangerous thing that we've got that. We know we're trying to put this genie back in the bottle. That's what we're trying to do. We have to restore faith that the judicial system actually works equally for everybody. The Democrats are big on saying no one's above the law. And every time they say it, it's when they're trying to nail a Republican for doing something that the Democrats have already been doing. And so they always say no one's above the law except for them. We've got, the Clintons, we've got Bill Clinton back when he was president. We have Hillary Clinton during her reign of terror. Now we've got the Bidens. The fact of the matter is, you have a long history of Democrats being above the law, and perhaps the greatest travesty is that Barack Obama set the whole Russia collusion hoax in motion, and pushed the ball and said, "Here you go, run with it." Knew about it, and pushed it in motion, and in an attempt to take down Donald Trump's presidency. They want to talk about peaceful transfer of power. Barack Obama engaged in deliberate sabotage of the Trump administration from day one. They spied, the Obama administration spied on the transition team. They spied on it's been confirmed multiple times. I was on the Trump transition team. And ironically, we were warned that the government computers we were supposed to be using, and that were supposed to be secure, we were warned by the transition team leaders that, well, they're supposed to be secure, but don't take that to the bank. Okay? So even the transition team leaders knew that there was a possibility that we were going to be spied on, but we were spied on. You know that because that's how come they went after Michael Flynn on that because of stuff that happened while he was on the transition team. And the spying they did on the transition team. That is a direct abuse of power, and it's an attack on the ability of a new government to come in peaceful transition. Because the Obama administration was attempting to undermine what we were trying to do coming in as the new Trump administration. That's what happened, and that's the truth. So I'm going to go back, and I'm going to go back to what Kevin McCarthy said and just end it on this note, because I think it's important that we just see that at least Speaker McCarthy understands exactly what's at stake.
Continues to show the two-tier system in America. If you are the president's leading political opponent, the DOJ tries to literally put you in jail and give you prison time. If you are the president's son, you get a sweetheart deal. Now, this does nothing to our investigation. It actually should enhance our investigations, because the DOJ should not be able to withhold any information now, saying that because of pending investigation, they should be able to provide Chairman Comer with any information that he requires. Continue.
That's the rest of the story. Thank you very much, folks.